The party of Nelson Mandela turns 106. South Africa's ruling ANC is marking this anniversary with a pledge to rebuild itself from deep divisions and accusations of corruption. But can the new leadership solve the many challenges the ANC faces? This is Inside Story. Hello there and welcome to the programme. I'm Laura Kyle. South Africa's governing ANC is one of the oldest political movements in Africa. It was founded in 1912 and has been the dominant party since the end of apartheid in 1994. But the party that promised to bring prosperity to millions of South Africans has been accused of corruption and mismanagement. Its new leader, Cyril Ramaphosa, says he wants to change that. He's promised to restore credibility to an organisation that was once led by Nelson Mandela. Is he up to the task? We'll put that to our guests in just a moment. But first, Tanya Page reports from the ANC's 106th anniversary celebration in the Eastern Cape.
Unity, the ANC.
They represent two different versions of the African National Congress, its past and its future. One is facing hundreds of corruption charges and was booed by the crowd.
I think let's welcome President Zuma.
The other is riding high after winning the ANC's top job. Loud cheers greeted him. Cyril Ramaphosa used his first major public appearance as the ANC's new president to inspire, while making thinly veiled references to his predecessor.
The movement has become deeply divided through factionalism, through patronage, through corruption, and through competition for resources.
If the boos made President Jacob Zuma uncomfortable, he didn't show it.
They were not listening to the people because the people were shouting and calling for a change. People are calling for corruption, to stop corruption.
We need to accept the president is one, Cyril Ramaphosa, all of us as ANC members, we need to rally behind him.
The new president's vision is to rebuild and renew the party of Nelson Mandela, to use new policies, including changing the constitution to allow the government to take mostly white-owned land without giving compensation, and free education for poor students, to realise the hopes and aspirations of millions of people.
All of the songs at the celebration have been about change, welcoming Cyril Ramaphosa and calling on him to take his place, to build unity and a new team spirit. There is an overriding sense of hope.
But after the party, speculation is rife that there could be a push within the ANC's top structures to force President Zuma out of office before his term is up next year. That for there to be real change, Zuma has to go. Tanya Page, Al Jazeera, East London, South Africa.
Well, let's take a closer look at the African National Congress. It was founded in 1912 with a primary mission of spearheading the struggle for equal rights in South Africa. The introduction of apartheid laws in 1961 was a turning point. The ANC launched its armed struggle with Nelson Mandela as commander-in-chief of its military wing, which led to the ANC being classified a terrorist group and banned. It took 30 years for that ban to be lifted, and Mandela's release from prison in 1990 set the stage for the end of apartheid. In 1994, the ANC won its first election in a new democratic South Africa, and Mandela became the first black president. Jacob Zuma was elected to head the ANC in 2007 before becoming president of South Africa. But the party's new leader, Cyril Ramaphosa, has promised to clean up the ANC's image and vigorously fight corruption. Well, let's bring in our guests now. Plenty to talk about. In Johannesburg, William Gumede, Associate Professor at the School of Governance at the University of Witwatersrand. In Durban, Maharaj, a former spokesman for President Jacob Zuma. And also in Johannesburg, joining us via Skype, Nomboniso Gasa, Adjunct Professor at Public Law at the University of Cape Town. A very warm welcome to all of you. William, if I could start with you. Ramaphosa has two big challenges here ahead of him. One is uniting the ANC. Another is fixing the South African economy. Can he achieve both of these goals?
You know, Cyril Ramaphosa certainly has the skills, he has got the experience, and he has the energy, and I think he's got the hunger, so he can do it. But unfortunately, you know, the challenge is a very, very steep challenge. Because the first thing in trying to unite the ANC, you know, he's inheriting an ANC that's deeply divided between his supporters and the supporters of Jacob Zuma. Now, his first real problem is Jacob Zuma does not want to leave the state presidency. Now, and the longer Jacob Zuma stays in the state presidency, the more difficult it will be for Ramaphosa to, you know, to regain the public trust and the public confidence, and also his authority will be undermined. So that's his one challenge. The second challenge in terms of the economy itself, he needs to restore confidence in the economy. Now, Jacob Zuma in the state presidency and, you know, the people around Jacob Zuma were responsible for the lack of confidence in the government itself, in the economy. So we're not seeing the investment, we're not seeing the jobs being created. So Jacob Zuma is the obstacle. So he needs to get out of the state presidency. And unfortunately for Ramaphosa, the longer Jacob Zuma stays in the state presidency, so the less and less will people believe in the authority of Ramaphosa. They will start to think that Ramaphosa is just a puppet, you know, of the Zuma group, and he is in power. He may be the president, but he is not in power.
OK. Mac, do you agree with that Jacob Zuma is the obstacle to South Africa being able to move forward? And is he going to step down anytime soon?
To a large degree, I agree with Professor Gumede, but I have a different perspective in answering your question.
OK.
We need to look at what is actually happening in the ANC. Two events have taken place. The 54th Conference, which elected the new leadership. Secondly, which decided on policy positions of the ANC. That decision has been reinforced by the January 8 statement delivered by President Ramaphosa. And when we look at those two events, I think we need to acknowledge that as we headed for the 54th Conference, there was a mood of despair both within the ANC and in the country at large. Since that conference, there is a growing sense of hope. And the January 8 statement is reinforcing that hope because it has signaled significant changes. One, in the direction that the ANC is taking. Two, in the tone. Three, in the approach of the ANC as articulated in the January 8 statement, as well as the processes that are taking place. The leadership of Ramaphosa in delivering the January 8 statement was delivering a statement that was more than a personal statement of Ramaphosa. It was a statement adopted by the new national executive elected in December. So it is a statement supported by that leadership, mixed as it is. The diversity that exists in the ANC, the frightening part is the factionalism. But the other elements of diversity, of the diverse communities, the classes, the sectional interests that are housed within the ANC is very normal for the ANC.
I just want to pick up on the point that the longer Zuma stays in power as president, the weaker Ramaphosa is. Would you agree with that?
I think that statement has a validity, but it should not be made the anchor of the way forward. I think that President Zuma has to go. The crucial issue is how he goes and when he goes. And the issue of how he goes is also dependent on whether he would be able to rise to the occasion and put the interests of the country first. The second issue is when he goes. Yes, I agree, the longer it takes for him not to step down, the more difficult it becomes. But I am clear. I think that the processes that are taking place indicate quite clearly that President Zuma's time is up and he will soon be out of power. And it's only a question of how he goes and when he goes.
OK, let's bring in Nomboniso there. Jacob Zuma was booed at these anniversary celebrations. The people are clearly fed up with his leadership. How do you think he is going to exit this position as president?
It's very important to state up front that whether President Zuma goes or stays is no longer up to him. He is going to go. and he can choose whether he wants to go in a manner that allows him to have the status of having been a president and all the sort of like perks that come with that, or whether in fact he wants to be impeached. So whether he's going, and I disagree with Mr. Maharaj in saying that, President Zuma's staying or going is not central to the way forward. Actually, it is. And it's not just President Zuma alone, it's President Zuma and a whole lot of people. How will he go? I think that a number of people are trying to convince us that it is possible to get President Zuma to leave peacefully and allow him the dignity that he deserves. There's a different view to that. It's important to also acknowledge the fact that currently there are legal cases that have been that await, and those are not going to go away. So it's important to separate the decision of the ANC and the decision of the country. So whatever the ANC decides, the country's courts and the country's judicial system and the country's citizens have a say in that, and that is outside of the ANC.
Okay, I mean, Mac, Nomboniso's right, isn't she? I mean, Zuma is central to this simply because the ANC is so divided. I mean, it's almost half and half in the support for Zuma camp and the support for the Ramaphosa camp, right up to the top leadership.
It appears to me that we are splitting hairs a little bit, because we need to look at a huge set of challenges facing Cyril Ramaphosa. Let's be very clear. Fixing the economy rests on a huge challenge. It is growth with transformation. You cannot have growth without transformation in South Africa, and you cannot have transformation without growth. So it's not a simple question as in other countries, simply growth. Number two, we have poverty, we have inequality, we have joblessness. And we have joblessness in a world economy where the fourth industrial revolution is exacerbating the joblessness. And we have the corruption. But as important for me in the decisions of the ANC is the capacity that we have lost. We have failed to create a professional civil service. We have a civil service at the moment where directors general change almost overnight, so that there is no institutional memory. There is a major fault line in the way the ANC has got to learn its lessons from the 22 years of governance. And that is to ensure that we have a systematic process of implementation.
Okay.
What is being signaled here from the President in the January 8th statement is a determination to attend to those problems. So President Zuma's going, for me, is a given.
Right, okay,
that
because,
no longer,
William, we have seen, haven't we, the ANC adopting some policies, two key policies, one expropriation of land
but the issue is, what are you going to do about the issues that divide our
another
people?
Policy of giving free education to poor students. But how does that marry up with Ramaphosa's vision, which is to attract foreign investors? Can you do that on the one hand, whilst addressing inequality on the other?
Absolutely. Ramaphosa has a deadline, so, he doesn't have time. And his deadline is next year's, the 2019 national election. That is his deadline. Now, what he needs to do is, can he, in the space of, under a year now, can he produce growth and can he produce transformation at the same time, as Mr. Maharaj has said? Now, in order to get growth, one has to get growth to do transformation. You can't do transformation without growth. And for Ramaphosa to get growth going, he'll have to get the confidence of investors, internationally and locally, and of ordinary citizens beyond the ANC. That is a real challenge. Now, the problem is, the Zuma group, who's in control of the state now and in control of half of the ANC, most of them really don't care about growth. What they want to do is to safeguard themselves from possible prosecution and to hold on to their positions. And now that is the stumbling block for Ramaphosa. He needs to get the growth, but you know, the stumbling block is actually inside the ANC itself and Mr. Zuma. So he needs to he needs to firstly get Mr. Zuma out of the governing space and then take control of government, appoint his own people so that he can get a confidence bounce, so that the markets can respond, you know, local business can respond, and so on. So that really is his challenge. Now, the Zuma group have gone for populist policies, you know, like, for example, you know, taking land without, without compensation. Now, what that does, that undermines confidence.
Okay.
And that really is the problem then. So almost where Ramaphosa will have to work against a big part of his party that, you know, because some of the policies that from the Zuma group, that's coming from the Zuma group, very populist policies, undermine Ramaphosa's own strategy, you know, to get confidence again.
I see your point. So, Nomboniso, how does Ramaphosa gain confidence? Is it by, as he says he will, confronting corruption on all forms? And in order to do that, does he then have to have a purge of the ANC, which is going to create him a huge number of enemies?
Well, I mean, firstly, you know, Mr. Maharaj would like to minimize the fact that President Zuma's going is critical in this, because that's part of how you build confidence. As long as South Africans and people in the world see President Zuma in the position that he is in, that they're going to feel that nothing has changed. So that's the first thing. Secondly, the policies. You know, the ANC conference has come up with a number of resolutions. The one is free education, which is a very not well thought out position, because South Africa at the moment is in a state that is not really able to make such guarantees. So it was, you know, we can't run away from the fact that it was very populist of President Zuma to actually make that announcement. And he made it.
And will cost an awful lot of money, and there's a lot of questions as to where that money will come from.
Yeah, the second, and then the one that is very important is one on land. The ANC resolution on land does not say that there will be land expropriation that be necessarily without expropriation without compensation. It says that it's going to fast track and look at the expropriation of land within Section 25 of the Constitution. So it's very important to make that. So what that resolution tries to do is to balance the populists as well as people who are much more realistic, because they know that the Constitutional Court is not, in fact, going to endorse that, because they've never approached the Constitutional Court and say Section 25.
So if we then see Ramaphosa tackling corruption, is that something that he can and will do? Will this make a crucial difference to South Africa?
Well, if he doesn't tackle corruption in this year, if there are no concrete actions that are being taken in this year to tackle corruption, to get people to account for what they have done, and to have prosecution where it is necessary to ensure that the institutions of state, which have been compromised in President Zuma's time, if he doesn't do that, in fact, the ANC is going to be in trouble in 2019. It's no longer about what the ANC wants to do. It's about what it has to do for survival.
Sure. And Mac, I just want to move over to Mac for a moment, because there is an interesting development with Jacob Zuma. He has launched his own corruption inquiry, hasn't he, into claims of state looting. Is that being seen as too little, too late?
Let's be very clear. The commission that he has announced is, so far the announcement is in accord with the decision of the Public Protector Thuli Madonsela, a report which was endorsed by the courts. Namely, it said that the Judicial Commission should be headed by a judge who should be selected by the Chief Justice. That has been announced with the agreement of the Chief Justice. What is at issue at the moment is the terms of reference. And again, the body of opinion is saying that the terms of reference have to conform with the recommendations of the Madonsela report. That is how the courts have seen it, There is uncertainty about it at the moment, but I think we have to acknowledge that the new administration under Cyril Ramaphosa has interacted with President Zuma and ensured that that judicial commission is being established. Number two, President Ramaphosa, on the January the 8th statement, which is the NEC statement, said that that alone is not enough. There has to be criminal investigations and prosecutions of people who have benefited and participated in corruption.
Okay, so Mac, would that extend to Jacob Zuma himself? He has a myriad of corruption charges against him. Are we going to see the president, whether he's in that position or whether he's an ex-president, are we going to see him in court being prosecuted?
The courts have empowered the deputy president of the country to appoint the next head of the National Prosecuting Authority. The deputy president is Deputy President Ramaphosa. He has that task to do. It's no longer in the hands of President Zuma on that one. So that is the next process.
Okay,
there are processes that President
Nomboniso, I saw that you were trying to get in there. You had something to say on that point. I'm going to pass the mic over to you.
By the government.
Well, I'm saying that you are asking whether there will be a time when President Zuma will go to court and answer to the charges or allegations. Well, it will be the charges then. And I'm saying to you that, yes, there will be. And that is no longer in the hands of the ANC. Even if they decide that President Zuma must step down, the charges do not necessarily fall away. Now you must understand there are a number of ways in which these issues are dealt with in South Africa. If the state prosecution does not want to deal with this, there is a provision for private prosecution and other provision for private prosecution. A lot of citizens, actually, that are fighting for defense of constitutional democracy in South Africa are already looking at that option. So one way or the other, the ANC is no longer in a position to shield President Zuma as well as his allies. If Mr. Ramaphosa and anybody else does not want to charge, well, if the NPA does not want, the National Prosecution Agency does not want to charge President Zuma, citizens are already actually looking at different options to make sure that President Zuma and his acolytes have their day in court, that they take responsibility for what they have done to this country.
OK. William, many people might say that Jacob Zuma needs to be out of office before the State of the Nation address, which is in February. A, is that going to happen? And B, is it going to be done in a dignified way? What do you think Ramaphosa is trying to do?
I think this is a challenge for Ramaphosa because ideally, for him to show that he's in charge, to start his reforms in the ANC and to start his reforms in government, he needs to be, in charge of the government by February, when we traditionally in South Africa have the opening of our political year, and where the government's forecast what he's going to do and so on. Now, right now, it seems almost impossible that Jacob Zuma will leave the state presidency before that, because Ramaphosa now, because he's not in full control of the ANC, he's busy negotiating with Jacob Zuma, exit strategy for Jacob Zuma. So we can, I think, safely say that this negotiation may take anything between now and most probably even the end of 2018. And of course, as I said earlier, the longer Jacob Zuma stays in the state presidency, unfortunately, the more it will erode the authority of Ramaphosa, and it will make it very difficult for him to introduce his reforms in the party and in the country. So my sense is that it is most probably likely that Jacob Zuma, as the state president, is likely to deliver the State of the Nation address in February. Now, if that happens, I'm afraid to say for Mr. Ramaphosa, it would look as if he's not in charge.
It'll be very interesting to watch the leadership of South Africa over the next few weeks. Many thanks today to all our guests for joining us here on Inside Story. William Gumede, Maharaj and Nomboniso Gasa. And thank you too for watching. You can see the programme again anytime by visiting our website, that's aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, do go to our Facebook page, that's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Laura Kyle, and the whole team here, bye for now.